already know the name ValveKing, which was originally a series of affordable but decent amps which Peavey brought out a few years ago. And they've just brought out a new series of ValveKings. It's like a second generation, and they're bristling with features that you would normally find on boutique amps. We've got a 20-watt combo here in the studio today. There is others in the range. There's a 20-watt head, there's a 100-watt head, and a 50-watt combo, but this 20-watt amp is probably the one you'd want to choose for small club gigs and studio work. So it's the one we've chosen to show you. Now, some of the features that you'll find on this amp, if you go around to the back panel, there's a sophisticated DI out, so there's a USB direct recording out. There's an XLR direct recording out. It's all microphone simulated, as Peavey call it, so you'll get a fairly nice natural sound out of that. There's also a 3-stage attenuator around the back, and on the front panel, there's an awful lot of tone shaping options, from boost switches to dials that change the performance characteristics of the amp's power stage. So without further ado, we'll just show you how they actually sound. Okay, so let's start with the clean channel. Now, it's a pretty conventional clean channel. You've got bass, mid and treble controls. And there's also a channel select button, which obviously flips you between the lead channel and the clean channel. That can be used in conjunction with a foot switch. So obviously if you're playing live, that's a very handy feature. And you've also got this bright switch, which has quite a profound effect on the tone. So I'll just show you what the clean channel sounds like without the bright switch. Then I'll stop and engage it and you can hear the contrast. So this is without the bright switch engaged. Okay, switch it on. So obviously that sounds quite a bit crisper and brighter in general, so it's nice to have that ability to sort of switch tonality there. So moving on to the master section, you'll find some quite interesting controls here, and these kind of govern how the amp responds in terms of the playing dynamics and things like how tight the bass response is and things like that. So just to explain, I'll show you it in action. So let's start with the very class dial. Now, you'll have heard the terms Class A and Class AB before, and they refer to differences in the way the power section of the amp is designed. Now, without getting into the physics of it too much, Class A amps are nice and quick and lively and very natural, organic sounding amps. Class AB amps, which you'll see very frequently in modern amp design, unlock a bit more power than Class A. They have a tighter bass response and more headroom typically. So the good thing about this very class dial is you can, on a sliding scale, vary the sound between those two kind of characters. So I'll just show it to you now. So this is wound all the way to the Class A operation side. So let's hear a little bit of it there. And if I push the dial all the way over to the Class AB side, you should hear a sort of subtle difference in tone. Let's move on to the damping dial, which does a sort of slightly different thing. Now, damping is interesting because it basically takes you from a very tight sound that's kind of quite focused and useful for things like metal, where you've got a lot of definition in the sound. And at the other end, at the loose end of the scale here, which is actually marked as loose, you get a little bit more warmth, you get a bit more sort of openness, and maybe what people might perceive as being more of a vintage tone. So I've got the damping dial all the way to the loose side at the moment, so let's just hear that. Okay, and we make it all the way over to the tight side. You'll hear a little drop in volume and a little bit more focus. Okay, so I mean, you can play with these dials or to your heart's content to sort of dial in the perfect tone for what you're trying to do, which I think could be quite useful in the studio, where little fine differences in the performance of the amp could make something just sit in the mix perfectly. So let's just move that all the way over to the loose again and put it on Class A, because that's my favourite tone. I'm sure other people would have a different favourite. Also on the master section, you've got a high quality digital reverb right here. So I'm going to put this on fairly heavily so you can hear how that sounds. So here's a little bit of the reverb sound. Okay, let's just use a slightly more subtle setting, which is probably more typical of what you'd use it for. Here we go again. Okay, so that's pretty nice, and that's the master section. Okay, finally we come to the lead channel. So this has got traditional sort of bass, mid and treble EQ controls. It's got a master volume and also a gain dial. So far so conventional. You've got a little boost switch there, which can also be operated with a foot switch, which just gives you a little lift for solos or whatever. And you've also got this kind of gain switch here, which just basically adds on another shovelful of gain if you should need that. So let's listen to some of those sounds. You'll hear it first with a hefty dollop of gain already dialed in, but the boost switch isn't engaged and neither is the gain switch. So here it is with just that basic sound. Okay, and if I put the boost switch on, you should hear a little lift. Okay, and now this is the biggie. The gain switch has quite a big lift in gain. Okay, so which of those you prefer is very much down to personal taste and the kind of music you're playing, but it does give you an awful lot of versatility, which is always a good thing. So now we looked at some of the features of the amp, let's hear it being played in anger on a full track.